Hello. Do each of you want to start by introducing yourself for those who don't know you and tell us a little bit about your own engagement with creative arts in your life, which I think for both of you are a number of different kind of mediums. So we'll start with you, Sophie. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm a textile artist. I work with mostly using words in my practice. So I either write or I find text, often collect overheard phrases around the city, and I use those to embroider or to make banners with blocked text, like appliqued text on them. And I often has a political kind of activist bent to what I do, which I've really loved doing for it's probably about 5 years that I've been mostly working with textiles. Cool. But I also do a bit of writing and also love knitting and crochet.
Delightful. And Genevieve?
I'm a digital artist. I think I generally see me here. I'm probably like on a tablet, just you've seen that.
Yeah.
But I've been making art for as long as I can remember, and at this point it feels like a very integral part of who I am. But I also use art as a means to tell a story. I really love writing stories, and I love being able to visualize the worlds and the characters and drawing them. And that's very special to me, and I've been doing that for a very long time. And I've even got the characters and stories I've written when I was 13, and they've grown up and changed with me, and I've just sort of kept them, and that feels really special. It's like having my own little band of children. And I think because when you do art and writing at the same time, I can imagine other people who have that little combo, they hear a lot of the time, oh, you'd be really good at doing children's books. And it's agree, definitely, but I still love the idea of doing that, but I also really like the idea of doing more adult books, but still implementing art to them, because I feel like there's that subconscious, if it's got art in it, it's less mature, it's for children. And I'd really like to just continue implementing it, even as I do works that are more mature, and I don't want to have art be something that diminishes that and have that association of it's for children.
Sure, yeah. Following on from that, for both of you, how has your relationship with creative arts changed from when you were a child to a youth to now being an adult? Has your relationship changed, or does it feel kind of similar?
It feels kind of similar. I feel like it's always been a very safe place for me. I feel like over time it's also let me sort of challenge myself a bit. When you write a character, you're gonna put yourself in it, and so it's interesting to see yourself through someone that's not yourself. It kind of removes that lens that you put on yourself of questioning yourself and being able to see it separated, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. What about for you?
My practice probably hasn't changed a huge amount. I mean, it's gotten more. I wasn't working with a needle and thread all throughout my childhood, but I think the background to why I make has always, and that impetus to make something has always been similar. I remember the first artwork I ever made, I was 3, I think, and I got a whole bunch of grass clippings and plums, and I arranged them on a tray. And I was like, this is an artwork. And I remember clearly thinking, I made an artwork, not I've just arranged a bunch of random stuff. And so that for me, that feeling of needing to make something and wanting to make something meaningful with things that I use a lot of recycled fabrics, a lot of my old clothes, things like that. And so that same sort of thing that I think I was doing even at 3, sort of taking things that were all around me and trying to make art out of it, I'm still doing, but I'm just now doing it often with words, which I wasn't doing at that age so much. But yeah, it's been, and also I was making a lot as a young adult and a child in what I thought was kind of just just craft and wasn't art and wasn't valid enough to be kept or sort of be meaningful. And I now realise that there's a really important place for craft, and that it's actually not any less important than art and visual art. And there's a real kind of snobbery that comes around, craft practices, and it's often really gender-based and really, really kind of, and sort of financially placed, and it's not really about how good or how important something is, it's just about all these other markers. So I think that that's something that I've sort of started to look at as I go on, and to actually think those things that I made as a child were really important and really, they were creative practice, not just me mucking around after watching Play School or something, So yeah.
What, for both of you, do you have a preference of sitting down and starting and finishing a project in one sitting? Do you find it hard to leave a project and come back and have that longer stint? Or is it different, courses for courses?
I feel like I go in stages. I absolutely could not finish an artwork in a single sitting.
Okay.
It usually takes me months to get anything done. I'm very slow. It's very sad.
Okay.
But I try.
Do you
and
redo
I've
things, or
been
you
trying
just
to set goals
Yeah.
for myself.
Yeah.
Like in one sitting, I want to get the whole sketch planned out, and then I can come back, try and do at least some of the line work in this one area and all that, and then I'm trying to get a bit faster. But at this point, it's a bit sad.
Not necessarily. What? Tell me about some of the benefits of being quite slow in the art that you create.
Honestly, I can't think of much. It's kind of terrible.
Okay, never mind.
Because then I get to that point where it'll be a month after I've done and be my art style's changed just slightly, so this is worse now, actually. I shouldn't continue. And so now there's just a slew of unfinished work, and so that's why I'm trying to stop doing that and trying to be nicer to myself about my art.
Yeah. What about for you?
Almost everything I make takes a really long time. I do pretty much always hand stitching, and anyone who's ever made a banner hand stitched or made a quilt or even knitted something knows that it can take a really long time. And but I do it because I love that process. It's sort of almost as much, I don't know, maybe it sounds a bit selfish, but it's almost as much for me as it is for the audience who get to see it. But it's that sort of thing of, and that's where the self-care comes into it, because it's actually, for me, it's that process of sitting down, slowly working on something over, it might be years, but usually it's a few months, and it's that repetitive, meditative process that I find really, it's not always relaxing, it's not always self-care, sometimes it's work and sometimes it's boring and I don't enjoy it, but a lot of the time when I haven't done it for a while, I can feel myself getting a bit twitchy and a bit more anxious, and it's not it's my time to stop and to do something that is just a lot of my work is not complex stitching or difficult, it's just that same action over and over again, and that's what can really calm me.
What does the practice of sitting down, maybe with an iPad or with some fabric, and doing some creative practice, do for your mind? What does it do to that part of you?
It's really important for my mind because I'm autistic, and so I find that I need to, it's almost like a giant fidget toy for me, a little bit. And so it's a bit of a practice for me of being able to do something that kind of keeps my hands moving but quiets my mind a bit.
Okay.
And so it's that sort of process of being able to take something that is, your mind's kind of switched on, and it's that, I've been looking a lot recently about mindfulness and taking your mind into a practice of focusing on the present and being sort of finding tangible things that link you to the present. And I think for me, stitching is one of those really important things for that, because it allows me to be linked to the present moment, and you're just not, your brain's not as, I don't know, bouncy's the wrong word, but
No, I get
it's
it,
not
yeah.
sort of, all the little things aren't firing so much, you're just really focused, and I find that quite special for my kind of brain. So,
Sure. What about for you, Genevieve?
I feel like it's a pretty similar vein because I have OCD, so like it's very, very intense anxiety, and sometimes that does mean you need to just step away from your brain quite a bit. And I feel like art's a really good place to sit with that because, like, again, it's like, for me, it's like art and writing, so I'm like putting myself into my characters and seeing myself through my characters and like being able to remove that lens and step away and just sort of be in that art space creating feels really like special and calming, like even if it does get a bit sad with how long it takes, but like it's still very important to me in the end.
And what about for your body? Does it do things to the rest of your body?
Oh, I need to get better posture.
Okay, sure. I imagine, the sense of iPad, there's a real focus on a thing, but I imagine, there is a curling over that happens. Yeah. Apart from your posture, do you feel like your body sort of relaxes into the practice?
I sit in chairs weirdly, so probably should sit in chairs better to be drawing, but
Sure.
there is a routine.
Okay. What about you? What's the bodily, I guess, benefit of sitting with a craft or an art, like a fabric piece?
I think bodily, sometimes I relate to that feeling of like you can sort of tense up because you've been in that same position working on something for a really long time. But I often find for me it can be that thing of stopping and sitting, and sometimes sitting for a long time can actually be it's really good for my body, because for a long time I didn't do that. I rushed around and I didn't stop, and learning to do that, and that it's actually okay, and that my body will be all right with that, and that is actually a really important thing to do, and to take away too many stimuli and too many things going on can actually be really helpful. And I think one of the things I love about craft and about art is that there's a lot of different ways that bodily you can do it. You can make it yourself, or you can go and look at it. You can read about it. There's all these different ways that you can do it. And so for me, if I'm not feeling able to sit and stitch for a really long time, I might go and visit a gallery or something like that. So I can still experience it, but in a different bodily way.
In a moving kind of way. Tell me about the way working on creative arts affects your soul or your sense of discipleship. That kind of more that part of you.
I think my soul for it is obviously the content of what I make. I think the political impetus of my work and that focus really comes from a lot of a desire to make the world a bit more godlike and to find a way to, and be that through change in a social kind of or political kind of sense. Or if it's just by making something that people think, okay, I can stop for a second and see something that moves me in some way, be it, to change something, or just to think, okay, I see the world a little bit differently from that. And so there's that side of it. And then there's the side of how it changes me and can, I think, gives me time to sit with sit with God. And I remember someone saying to me years ago, if you're never silent, when are you ever going to hear God? And I took that to heart, that sometimes we need to hear God in voices and in people speaking to us and in people,
Sure.
but sometimes we just need to sit there quietly and listen. And sometimes I've had some really powerful moments with God, just making something and being there to hear it. Yeah.
For you, Genevieve?
I feel like it's a bit similar. Like, I feel like what I create is very much a reflection of my beliefs in politics, in the church,
Sure.
and growing up as a Christian and the different Christian environments I've been in and the positive and the negative ones. And so that bleeds into what I create most of the time, and has a lot of influence there. I don't think I could put into words like the specific feelings I get over it, but like it's something that I feel is very important to me in the way
Spiritual?
it inspires me.
Yeah. I have never thought that I've had capacity in visual arts. I can do music fine, but I've never felt like I've been an artistic person in visual media or even in poetry. There may be people in the room who feel similarly. What would you say to me or to people who feel that way?
I feel like this is probably really vague and people kind of hate when I say this, but just keep creating, please keep creating. I feel like the biggest step into like loving yourself is self-expression, and so like I just implore everybody to find something that lets them do that in some creative way. And I think that's really important, like with the way the world is right now, with so many artists and creatives and talented people losing their work and their jobs and their livelihoods due to things like AI taking people's jobs and what that does to the environment. And so I feel like this is a time that's more important than ever to keep creating and keep putting love into the world and into yourself.
It's not vague at all, Genevieve.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And I think that I recently found a beautiful section of the internet which is all about making bad art and how important it is to, it doesn't really matter if you're not making something that you think is worthy for anybody to see or anybody to, a lot of the things that I make, like this morning I made a pom-pom and it was just, it wasn't amazing, it wasn't sort of spectacular. I just looked up on YouTube how to make a pom-pom and I made a pom-pom. But it was a really beautiful process of making something. And so, it's just getting back to, I think we get very much, as adults with a lot of things, and particularly art, we get really worried about making it perfect or making it good or excellent or whatever. But whenever I feel a bit sort of stuck of making something, I just get a bunch of air-dried clay. And I feel like that's something that you can really, a lot of people can do. You can get it at a, $2 shop and you can just make something and you don't have to worry about it being good or being even something you're going to keep, but just getting your hands into it can be really, really helpful. And then also if it's not your thing and you don't find, you can always go and appreciate other people's art or craft or, we really need that. We need people who support the arts in that way and are not just, making something, but appreciating it or supporting their friends. So I think there's a lot of ways you can get involved in the arts even if you don't see yourself as someone who's a maker. Yeah.
And finally, coming back to something you said before, for those who do have that sense of, it's just craft that I'm doing, it's not of any benefit, or it does, it's kind of whatever, what would you say?
I think I'd say to that you're making something first and foremost for yourself, and that's really important, and that can't be taken away whether you're making something that you think just seems frivolous or useful or sort of something that you don't think is particularly creative. But I think also the beautiful thing, one of the things I particularly love about craft is that it's often a gift, and it's often something that people pass on to other people. And so I think that that is a really beautiful thing, that sometimes art can be something that's much more monetized.
Sure.
And I think craft, that's something to really hold on to say, not that you can't sell your craft, and that's not that it's devaluing that, but just saying how beautiful it is, that often it's a gift. And I think that, yeah, you just, the importance of valuing work that is, it's often really labour-intensive craft. And so, yeah, if somebody does make something for you, or you do buy something and you're a little bit questionable about why it's expensive or something, it's been really lovingly and time-consumingly made for you. And so, yeah, just appreciating that as well. Yeah.
Genevieve, any last thoughts for you?
Big agree on all of that. But I'd also like to just say that I believe all art is important. I also believe that all art is political. I think the creation of art itself, that process, is political in every positive way. And so just keep making art, please.
Would you give them a round of applause?